Welcome to EB-5 Investment Voice, where attorney insights intersects with immigration investments. If you are a foreign investor, domestic fund manager, or enterprising entrepreneur and want to get the most out of the EB-5 program, you have come to the right place. I'm Mark Deal, and I'll be your co-host on this journey. I'm joined by your host, Mona Shaw, and other attorneys at Mona Shaw & Associates, as well as immigration leaders from around the world. So let's get into EB-5 Investment Voice.
So Mona, I realized that the new EB-5 numbers are out, people applying from different countries, and it sounds like those applying for the EB-5 program from India is up, 300%? Is that right?
That's right. It's skyrocketed, Mark, but it's different. It's not what people are expecting. As soon as people hear that, the numbers are coming from India, we hear the next thing we hear are all of these events happening and everyone running off to India. And Rebecca and I have seen a very different type of output from India, a different type of market. So we thought that this was podcast worthy to bring in a couple of speakers who have moved from the Bollywood industry, would you believe, into EB-5. And we would like their opinion on what's going on in India itself.
That's right. Today on EB-5 Investment Voice, we welcome Sandeep Mehta and Sanjay Dayma. And they will be sharing with us their transition from Bollywood production to EB-5 investments. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here and lovely to talk about something that is so exciting.
Well, Sanjay, this is exciting. I mean,
yes. Bollywood is.
Well, yeah, it always is.
Bollywood has the glamour, Mark, but EB-5 is no less glamorous, by the way. But I feel like that's what's been the problem for some time. We've had glamour projects, and they haven't always been the right type of projects for the EB-5 market. Sanjay, you've decided to move into EB-5. I know you have other jobs, but this is something that you are very passionate about, yourself and Sandeep. First question is why? Why EB-5?
Well, EB-5 is a great program, actually. From the way I see it, the huge demand of education in India and the massive supply of education in US is the prime driver of this new found interest in EB-5. So parents who want to give their kids an access or an set of options so they can actually travel to the US in a manner that allows them to be pretty much like natural citizens here and get all the benefits while they study and then find jobs here without any of the immigration worries on their head. So primarily, I see that as a huge...
So you see education as a huge driver of bringing people in.
Yeah, that's
right.
certainly.
But you yourself have started a company along with Sandeep. Hi, Sandeep.
Yeah, hi, Mona.
And you're doing EB-5 projects.
Yes.
But are you doing EB-5 projects whilst you're sitting in Mumbai?
Yeah. See, because this opens on a huge opportunity, especially from an Indian point of view, where actually it combines the industries which are running in the entire United States on a small scale level, and as well as there is a demand from the investors who wants to move to the United States for their children's point of view and for their education's point of view here in India, and they want to go for an approach where they actually identify the projects where they can correlate with the people whom they are which they know them, they can personally meet them, they can...
Well, you're talking about the projects. So,
yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what your vision is right now, what you're seeing has been the attraction for EB-5 and the type of projects. Are you talking about big, large-scale real estate, or what industries are you talking about?
No. This is not the large scale of industries. This is mainly the small kind of the projects where eventually the EB-5 entire program was meant for. It was meant for the purpose of to promote the businesses, to promote the small scale companies, and to create the growth or to bring the overall economic impact in the United States.
Oh wow, Mark, we should have Sandeep talk to Congress so that they. It seems like these guys understand what EB-5 is before anyone else.
Yeah, my approach to this is the same, and this is what excites me as the reason why I think I got attracted to the EB-5 industry. There's a massive amount of bandwidth available in India, and that bandwidth needs to somehow find a way to channelize itself into the US market. And there are US businesses which they are passionate promoters who are driving it, but they probably don't have the bandwidth that they need. When you use the EB-5 platform and allow them to not only invest, get the green card, but extend the bandwidth into businesses into the US, it's a synergy that you simply cannot miss. And this is one of the exciting parts. So the way we as a company, as in Infinity Multiventures, looked at it was, can we identify businesses where the promoters are very passionate? They already have put in whatever they have into the project and require bandwidth and capital. So the EB-5 capital works on that front. But the bandwidth that gets added allows the promoters to focus on their business primarily, so they don't have to firefight on a daily basis, whether it comes to finance, whether it comes to restructuring, corporate, the entire gamut of management depth that they require. And this comes from the belief that when we normally would converse, me and Sandeep, we would always realize that there's an assumption that entrepreneurs may come with an idea and suddenly they'll become experts in every domain.
Right.
That's never going to happen.
Yeah, right.
And the idea should be to allow the entrepreneur to chase his dream with his product, pour his passion into that product, and let other people worry about the daily firefights and the nitty-gritties that they don't really need to get involved with, as long as they have the capital to push their ideas forward. And somebody else, obviously, they need to partner. They can't give away their control. So we are fairly sensitive to that as well. So we don't want the promoters to dilute to a particular extent. And beyond that, we want them to hold on, because then when the project really takes off, they get the fruits of it, and our investments are kind of giving us return. And the investors get more than what they had bargained for right from the beginning.
So this is, from what I understand, this is a completely new way of looking at EB-5. This is not your typical regional center project, 0.5% of interest, they build a building, etc., etc. From what I understand that you both are telling me is that you're identifying industries, small industries, perhaps smaller projects, but industries that require capital, which perhaps is very expensive if it comes on a conventional basis.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And secondly, you want the investor to feel comfortable. This is very important as we move forward, because right now we are at 500,000, but even by the end of this week, next week, we could be hearing announcements about it going up. Do you feel that with these type of projects that you're doing, that once the investment amount goes to $1 million, it will make any difference to your investors?
Maybe there'll be a dip in demand, I assume. But dip will eventually, again, come back with the kind of projects that you bring on board. People largely want to make sure that the capital is kind of secured at some way. The EB-5 program is capital as risk. So they understand that. But by having a company in India that literally puts their boots on the ground, puts their own money into the project, gives them confidence. And I guess $1 million wouldn't hurt, but it would certainly drop the demand to a certain extent.
Well, the argument is that you'll get a better quality investor.
Yes.
But you would also have to structure it whereby the return on capital, return on investment is higher. But Sandeep, what is your return on investment? What figures are you looking at right now for your return on investment on these smaller projects?
So realistically speaking, all these projects, basically they get a capital at a much lower cost when it comes from an EB-5 point of view. And most of the projects, which are the large real estate project, they offer a very minimum kind of the return. Whereas when you invest into a business, the business not only attached with your basic returns, which you are expecting between 3 to 5% of that, but also it throws you a kind of valuations which are these industries are picking up. When you look at the kind of the industries of the pharma, the kind of multipliers it can get, and the comfort which the promoters get with this kind of the capital, and they can focus on their businesses. Eventually the valuations of the companies can phenomenally
You mentioned pharma.
Yeah.
Are you not meaning farm?
Pharma,
You're talking about
education,
pharmaceutical, not agricultural, right?
Yeah. No, agriculture is actually, if you look at from India point of view, there is a huge connect between the US and India, America, I would say, from that platform, where there's a huge demand which is required in the India, and which can be sustained by, or which can be deployed by the US there, especially on the agriculture front and especially on the education front.
And the pharmaceutical
side.
Right. So these are a couple of industries that you've identified. So this is fantastic. So you're basically creating a partnership of a different type. It's not just simply somebody seeking EB-5 alternative capital. You are looking for long-term relationships,
Absolutely.
Infusion of capital.
Yes.
So other than the pharmaceutical industry, what other industries do you have in mind?
Education.
Education, certainly.
Yeah.
Yes, education, yeah.
That's a huge...
And that would be working with local universities?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not just local universities. We've taken a completely different approach to that. We are looking at the education from a 360-degree point of view. So our approach is that right from the time that a student desires to go to the US, what are the things that he's going to need? What are the things that are going to prepare him for a more easier and seamless integration into the US culture? How will he identify the right universities, high schools, whichever program he's going for, and how he's going to manage the money, or his parents are going to manage the money. And then along with that, there's this cultural needs. So Indian students, when they come here, food becomes an issue, living becomes an issue. So all of these things are costs. But there is a way one can build that up in such a way that there is a high degree of comfort. At the same time, when they land up here, they're fully prepared and taken care of by a company here that has a legacy business.
But this would be just directed to students from the Indian subcontinent.
Yeah.
We can expand that.
Yeah.
So we are not really, at this point of time, the demand in India is huge.
Right. Yeah.
But that can extend.
Right. But you would be looking at foreign students from all over the world and giving them some support and perhaps encouraging more foreign students to come, because the figures, again, have shown a dip in the amount of students actually coming to the United States, which is not good.
Absolutely.
So just to add a little bit, so we have tied up with a legacy business in the US called TESS USA. Now, TESS USA has been around for nearly 3 decades. They have the kind of bandwidth and the kind of understanding that they have of the US education system, including the ways and means of how to achieve your targeted university, how to get there in a more effective manner, is much higher if you go with someone who has that experience. So by tying up with someone like, say, TESS America or TESS USA, it allows us to take their bandwidth, allow them to grow, and TESS USA is already present in 12 countries. So we're not just talking India. We have a huge basket of countries in that. And these are all countries that are seeking US education. Yeah. So the idea there was just similarly, like we discussed pharma earlier, the pharmaceutical business. Yeah, pharmaceutical business. What we've identified, again, is something that made sense to us. At the same time, we knew that this would make a lot of sense to the investors and, of course, to the promoters. So education is the same idea. So you have a company here that's doing all the things that they would want somebody to handhold them through. And by having that kind of a tie-up, it's kind of across the board, they have that comfort.
So tell me, if all of these projects, if it wasn't EB-5, would people actually want to invest in these projects outside of EB-5, maybe some kind of crowdfunding?
Yes. In fact, we have got very good response from many of the investors who are not interested in the EB-5 or they are not looking, but as only a business where they see a lot of growth and see the demand which is happening in India. They can understand and correlate the businesses and the demand supply gap within the country and can realize the amount of growth is possible in that business.
Wow, so foreign direct investment, straight through.
FDI, possibly ultra HNI investments, and I would say the straight private equity investments is also happening on that front, which can actually understand because there are 2 big democracies right now. The India democracy, which also give quite good stability on a stable government in the country there, and as well as the democratic country US, like where all the policies and the processes and every kind of the things are being designed accordingly, which eventually the India is following the similar path going forward. And that opens a very long-term relationship between them.
What I wanted to add was, Mona's question was very interesting, whether investors would invest this outside the EB-5 program. And we are actually very pleased with the way these 2 projects have actually shaped up, because every time we made the pitch and we met investors, there are investors who said, okay, what if I want to invest if I'm not interested in the EB-5? Which was kind of surprising to us, because we had invited investors who were supposed to be interested in the EB-5. And their approach to this was that not only is the due diligence done, you're also putting your own money, you got the boots on the ground, and you're helping with the management depth. So for them, not only the business was in a lucrative space, but also the way it was being handled. That was exciting. So they were pretty much keen to invest money because it was a good business and not necessarily it being an EB-5 project. So to us, that's the kind of businesses we are anyway interested in. So the 3 sectors that we have identified where we think we would like to be and aggressively go in that is pharmaceuticals, education, and technology. And the 2 of these projects have already started. Technology, we're in the process of identifying. But that's the idea there.
And you can see, Mark, that these are the industries which are not traditional for EB-5, not at all. But at the same time, they are so integral out there. We see technology being picked up all across the world. I mean, Saudi just started their the advertising for the 2030 vision, which is all about investment in tech. We are viewing EB-5 really from a different lens. And I personally feel that this is the way forward. With the changes coming in for EB-5, it certainly matches up with a higher investment amount, and it reflects the amount of the numbers that are coming from the different countries, that it reflects their interests.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it also takes the dependency away from the pilot program.
Exactly, exactly.
True.
So if we can get Senator Grassley to listen to this podcast, I'm sure he would be happy here.
My personal opinion is that I think the EB-5 program was initially designed for projects of this nature. I don't think they were designed for real estate or hospitality and glamour projects because
Right.
one, you're not very certain of what's going to go. Secondly, real estate, while it sounds secure, but somebody else is executing that in another country which you're not going to be able to monitor. And a sizable number of investors have come across and met us and said, hey, I did this about 4 years ago and I'm yet to see any development on that. I'm just hoping that my green card gets done. Forget about the money. And to us, the assumption was that obviously that was not what Congress probably thought. The government didn't think this is where the money should go because this money would be available and there'll be a lot of interested investors in the US itself if they thought the project was exciting. You won't have to go outside to get a real estate project funded. But smaller niche products, they find it very difficult to go to a bank, pitch an idea, or make a business. But banks want to see that the business is not only up and running, but it's also revenue generating, and then they can leverage some more.
Exactly.
Whereas actually the promoters need the money at the beginning part of it.
Exactly.
So I think almost half a decade has gone into that quagmire, that vacuum, where a lot of money poured into the real estate, whereas it should have been channelized into businesses where genuine value would have been added, growth would have been added.
You're absolutely correct, Sanjay. That is how we've often seen EB-5. EB-5 is, well, getting funds for smaller projects, alternative industries is not easy. We've worked with many of our developer clients and we've gone to bank after bank. It's very, very difficult. EB-5 is a wonderful way of getting alternative capital in if you can. But the problem is, yes, you're right. The big real estate projects have been sucking up all of the energy and stuff in this and money in this space. But they are not necessarily the most secure because most of the time, EB-5 money is used for a mezzanine loan, which is the riskiest part of the EB-5. And the EB-5 money itself is at risk. They don't have any ownership. If a real estate project is going to have a problem, the first thing to go is the value in the land. So there really isn't any security.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Mona. And one of the things I really like about this is, well, sure, investors invest in something that's going to give them a rate of return, right? They make that quantitative decision of, I'm going to put my money in this and get something else, something larger out later. But qualitatively, investors also, well, invest money in things that they know about or things they want to know about or even things that they're passionate about. And I like the idea of the pharmaceutical, the tech, and well, for me specifically, especially the education, because I can see foreign national investors that would want to make an investment in some type of educational lifestyle services or whatever it may be tied with education, something that's geared specifically for helping foreign nationals achieve their American undergrad and graduate degrees. I think they would understand and resonate with that more. I know myself when in a previous life, when I was working with electrical engineers and aeronautical engineers, half the PhDs were from India. They were Indian nationals, and a lot of them had American PhD degrees in these higher sciences. So there's always a demand there. There will continue to be a demand because we need highly qualified people, and to get that American education. And we've heard this before, Mona, whether it's somebody from India or China or wherever, they invest because they want their children to get that American education. And this way they can also invest in something that will, well, possibly help that child get their education.
Yeah, I want to add one point on this. When you are looking actually from India per se specifically, so the India investors' psyche is little different than the normal countries what you look at from there.
Oh, let's hear it.
Because it's more of to understand the people whom they are investing. first it becomes definitely the people whom they are investing in, the second it becomes the project. If both the things are exciting, then automatically the money flows happens. One second point, the which is a very important, which is happening from India point of view, where the education, when it comes to the education for their child, they are ready to pay any kind of money, they eventually want to get the best of the education for their children's there. And then the demand especially is happening in India, and which can be catered by the US dramatically in different manner there. And suddenly everyone is looking to send their kids for their higher education in the United States in one of the good colleges and good universities and in the high schools here. Then they want them also to work here. And the way the H-1B visas and the way the EB-2 visas have been taken care of, specifically from India specifically, they want to ensure that their kid get an EB-5 investment.
Actually, we see exactly the same market from China. The driver behind India and China has been education. And in fact, it's been like that for many other countries from around the world. But I would say the highest amount has been from India and China.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you see the 300% jump, it is basically you are taking it from a very lower number to 300%, which is in absolute number, it's not very high.
Well, EB-5 was not so known in India before.
It was not known. Correct.
We actually have had Indian clients
So
in
the
EB-5
real
for a long
demand has
time.
to come now. The real demand has to come now.
Right. We've actually had EB-5 clients for a long time with an Indian passport, but not from India. From India, it really began in 2017
Absolutely.
proper.
And now it's attracting Bollywood talent.
Yeah.
The EB-5 program is now so much on the radar that it's actually attracting talent from other industries. And
Including Bollywood.
Yeah, specifically, like in my case, Bollywood, though I'm not literally like changing, but our personal belief has been that we have bandwidth more than what we focus on normally. And we can extend that bandwidth. Why not offer it to projects and people and ideas? So
one point that I want to bring out, guys, is that India is a little different from China when we've often had these India-China discussions because of the language. Everybody in India does actually speak English.
Absolutely.
And because of that, there is a little different understanding. And because of that, there is a tendency for the Indian investor to shop around.
yeah, true.
Absolutely.
Is that an advantage or disadvantage to you?
That's a huge advantage, actually.
If you got good projects, it's an advantage, right?
Yeah.
Well, I find that the developers we've spoken to prefer to be able to speak at least to somebody themselves as opposed to through an interpreter.
Yeah. And one more point I would like to add here, because the Indian government has taken an initiative, especially on Startup India. And there's lots of startups which are coming in India. And at the end of the day, all these startups moves to either if they are IT projects, to the Silicon Valley, or they look forward to the US to understand the standardization, to understand the processes, to understand the market. The flow happens from India for all these startups moving to the US. They look forward for all kind of the good services, all kind of the good products, all kind of the projects. So US-India connect, I would again emphasize on that. This is a very big going forward.
I think traditionally, India and the US have had a relationship. It has grown. If we go back to the 50s and the 40s, it really wasn't there. 60s even. I think in the 60s and 70s, it was still more the UK and India. Definitely from the 80s onwards, it has been India-US. And relationships, obviously in the tech, is very recent, but there's relationships in other areas too.
This relationship, especially on a banking side, the kind of the banking which is happening in India and the kind of automation which has happened. India is driving one of the largest world digital wave in the country there because of a lot of initiatives taken by the government there. And that immediately connect you from a banking from a rural of the country to aspire for the US. And because US is in a highly developed environment.
What do you mean? What do you mean, Sandeep? That it's banking aspired from the rural side?
So when I say banking aspired from there are a lot of payment banks which are happening. These payment banks and the kind of the credit facilities and the kind of the growth which is happening in the country, in the entire country, they also now exposed to the companies in the United States and the banking systems for the United States, because these things have been followed from all these banks are actually standardizing these processes which have been already being implemented in the large banks in the United States.
Are you saying that you are aware of funding going from Indian banks into the United States?
Yes. There is.
Okay,
So
and
not add a little context to what Sandeep is trying to say.
right.
Yeah.
Banking was actually pretty much like a privilege in India for a huge mass.
Yeah.
So the unbanked was almost at an 85%. So can you imagine 1.3 billion people and 85% of those people are unbanked and not served by any banks?
Wow.
Yeah.
And in the last say, 5 to 10 years, that has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And this got further pushed with this last government that came in. And then with the technology eruption, so the fintech and the wallets and WhatsApp Pay and all those things have literally percolated it down right to the last mile. So now suddenly there's a huge amount of banking population, which is for the first time realizing that this access to not just capital, but to information around the world is available to them. So the demand that is getting fueled in almost every industry is coming from there. So it's not the tier 1 or tier 2 cities that are driving it. It's actually tier 4 and tier 5 cities that are driving 3, 4, and 5 that is driving this new demand. And this is driven because they are now interacting with banks which are sophisticated, and they kind of sit down and understand, oh, this can be done, this couldn't be done earlier. So that definitely has created a huge channel. And we are very certain that Indian banks would definitely love to participate in this kind of a growth. So when they see, say, EB-5 capital moving, and they know this is going into good projects, they get access to that project.
Right.
Okay.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
So about 5 years later, if that company was to be approached looking for a global funding, these banks would be fully aware because they participated in its initial stage. So that definitely opened up a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions around these kind of things. And when we have met banks here and there, both, they've shown very keen interest in this. So when we kind of detail the projects, their eyes widen up. They're like, why didn't these kind of projects come before?
The point which I was trying to make is that, especially on a banking side, if the EB-5 companies where they require for investment in the EB-5 here, they have a connect. Majority, because of the startup things are happening in India also, they have a lot of connects from the Indian businesses. And if there isn't a connect which is happening on the US-India connect, suddenly it opens a banking relationship.
Right. This is kind of really important, Mark. Make sure, you keep this all in, because this is really an angle that, quite frankly, we've not explored before. And I think that this is something that we'd like to sort of expand on at a later stage as well.
Right.
And write about, because this is really the kind of information we're trying to get out to Congress, and people that, hey, this is not about one developer making money for themselves. This penetrates.
Right. I think stories like this does penetrate. Remember on the last episode, we talked about Jeff Carr, and we talked about the economic impact and the jobs it creates. And as you mentioned, Mona, this is not just about one big developer. This is about a lot of different people bringing a wide variety of projects into the program. And I think we're starting to see a lot of unique investment opportunities. And some, as we found today, have a Bollywood background. Sandeep Mehta and Sanjay Dayma, thank you so much for coming on EB-5 Investment Voice.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today on EB-5 Investment Voice. The topics presented in this podcast is informational in nature and is not to be taken as specific legal advice. If you have questions on the topics presented in this episode or other investment immigration needs, please contact Mona Shaw & Associates. Mona and her attorney staff can be reached at mshawlaw.com. That's MSHAH law.com. Make sure you don't miss our next episode focusing on a different aspect of the EB-5 program by subscribing to the podcast. While you're at it, leave us a rating on iTunes. If you really found this episode valuable, share it with someone else that could benefit from this information. Until then, I'll see you on the next episode of EB-5 Investment Voice.